What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Blue Beetle, the latest DC Comics film from Warner Brothers. This film, directed by Angel Manuel Soto, probably best well known for Charm City Kings, and Blue Beetle is being held up as the first, Latino-led superhero film. And there's a lot to get into with that. I think that's probably the best element about the movie, honestly. And Blue Beetle, notably, infamously, is the second to last DC film in the DCEU, with Aquaman 2 to follow later in the year, before we get the DC Studios reboot starting in 2025 with Superman Legacy under the helm of James Gunn. And I'll get into more about the DC issues with management and timing and things of that nature. But Blue Beetle, I think ultimately was saved due to the fact that it was originally pitched as an HBO Max film, but then switched to a theatrical plan. That saved this film from not suffering the same fate as Batgirl, which was unreleased and written off for a tax write-off instead. Thankfully, that did not happen to Blue Beetle. I think Blue Beetle is pretty solid. I think it's okay. I think there are good things about it and some kind of annoyingly poor things about it as well. But it's a solid entry. I think it's better than Shazam 2. It's better than Black Adam. I like The Flash more than this. I like The Suicide Squad more than this. So it's not fantastic, but it's okay. And unfortunately, it seems like the box office might prevent this movie from getting a sequel. But of course, this movie's been in a weird position where it was talked about as being a DCEU movie, but Gunn had said that the Blue Beetle could return. All that's been kind of unclear. I wonder if the box office will change some minds about that plan. We'll see. You also wonder how much of this box office is about the Blue Beetle and like the trailers and about the movie itself versus just general awareness of the film. Of course, the cast cannot promote this due to the strike, and the DC brand has been in a spiral in the last year, with Shazam 2 and The Flash really underperforming, especially at the worldwide box office. That continued with Blue Beetle, unfortunately. It seems like it's a compounding effect, and that's unfortunate. We'll see what happens with Aquaman. But Blue Beetle, I think on one hand, there's a lot of like familiar tropey elements to it. This is a straight up superhero origin story. You think about the tenets of a superhero origin story, the things that happen in superhero origin stories, you get them in this. There's a lot of things that immediately latch onto and look familiar, And I think along those lines, you have Susan Sarandon as Victoria Cord. Very poor villain, really kind of a phoned-in performance by Sarandon, but just an uninteresting villain as well. At least her henchman has a little bit more under the hood, but really the star of the show with this film is the family dynamic with Jaime Reyes, who becomes the Blue Beetle. Jaime Reyes, of course, played by Xolo Maridueña, who, of course, was one of the big breakouts for Cobra Kai on Netflix. And the Jaime Reyes, the Reyes family dynamic, and the fact that his whole family has like sizable ensemble roles in the film, in the storytelling. When Jaime becomes the Blue Beetle, it's in front of his family. It's not like, in a back alley or a spider bite that no one else saw happen. It's different, and the family is a big part of the story. And on top of that, it is a Latino family. And I think it's really awesome that you have like something clearly targeting the Latino film-going community, because that is an underserved population at the box office, despite the fact that Latino theater going is a big chunk of the domestic box office, and then the domestic number of tickets sold. So that's awesome, and about time type thing. And thankfully, I think culturally, it comes across as Latino, having Latino lens without having like a preachy or kind of unfair point of view from the film. It doesn't come across as it's not like taking advantage of the fact that it's about a specific community. Like, it actually comes across in a genuine way. And I think that's what I most appreciated about the movie. honestly, because again, like, the villain's not very good. The origin story is very familiar and tropey and predictable. Um, Also, kind of unsurprisingly, everything with the Blue Beetle and the Scarab and how the Blue Beetle powers work and how this foreign alien, creature, technology, sentient being of some kind, how that all works, and that being's kind of lack of motivations and all of that is very undefined in Blue Beetle the film, and that was just kind of a bit perplexing to me. The movie is very uninterested in all of that. Thankfully, it's at least interested in the family dynamics, and that's something that you can latch onto and enjoy. I think Xolo as Jaime is solid. He's likable. He's a bit precocious. It's kind of like Tom Holland casting, I guess. I don't think he does not given a ton of great scenes, to be honest. I wouldn't necessarily call him like the standout cast member, but he's like convincing enough in the role that in a different world, maybe it'd be cool if he could just be the Blue Beetle moving forward, but who knows if that's going to happen. The rest of the family, his sister is pretty funny. I enjoyed her. Mario, sorry, not Mario. George Lopez is Jaime's uncle Rudy, who's like a prepper, paranoid, anti-Big Brother type guy. Really enjoyable. The grandmother figure and revelations about her is pretty fun too. But the most significant other cast member would have to be Bruna Marquezine as Jenny Cord. She's a big star in Brazil. This is her first Hollywood performance. She's pretty nice, pretty fun. It's quite perplexing, or I guess implausible, that this like billionaire, mid-20s woman somehow ends up falling for Jaime by the end. Like, you gotta like kind of roll with some of the punches with this. Like, some of it kind of bends credulity, but I did kind of enjoy them. I think like the chemistry is like so in the film, but it felt like it could eventually build to something if there's more movies. I don't know. I think the action also kind of stands out for being quite inconsistent. Like, sometimes the lighting just doesn't seem great. The effects, they're okay, but like, you're not watching any like amazingly, animated scenes. Like, it's pretty rote, like CGI beat 'em up stuff anyway. So like, I didn't really mind that it was like only looked okay, because it's not like it was super interesting action. I think that the fact that this might have been on HBO Max in one point of its existence perhaps speaks to that. It's not a super expensive superhero movie. I believe the budget was only like 100-ish million. Yeah, 104 million. Which I guess makes it even more disappointing that the movie's underperforming so much at the box office. Again, the worldwide box office was under 50 million, 25 million domestic. Like, unfortunately, even with a low budget, that's not going to get it done, But yeah, I'd say, just as I said before, the stuff with the Latino culture, and I think that when there's the Cord Industries raid the Reyes home, that is, I think, filmed in a smart way, kind of invoking a police raid on Latino homes, kind of invoking the treatment of undocumented people in this country. That comes across well. Gentrification being a kind of key plot line in the early parts of the movie. I think that's done pretty effectively. It's cool to, I guess, be in Pantera City, which is just a different location in the DC world than we've been recently. It's not Metropolis or Gotham or Central City. It's not kind of dark and dreary. It's actually basically a stand-in for Miami, I think, is what we're supposed to take away from that. But, sorry, Palmera City. But yeah, I think the cultural stuff, the family relationships, when the movie's actually just spending time with the family and having them play off each other, that's the most enjoyable stuff about it. And the rest of it kind of comes across almost like how some of like the mid-level DC stuff or the mid-level Sony superhero stuff comes across, where it's like, yeah, you kind of understand all of those beats, but at least Blue Beetle has that cultural awareness or cultural cachet. I think that makes it stand out. Because if that wasn't there at all, I think this would be a pretty down the middle, just mediocre origin film that, whether it's fair or not, the audience tolerance for such fare has evolved. We've gotten so many superhero movies in the last, 20 years. Standards change, standards raise, and what might have worked and been okay for a franchise starter back in the day is not necessarily still the case today, But if you're thinking about things to latch on to, there's some familiarity between this and how the first Ant-Man handles its ensemble, and I think that's the best thing about it. But we'll see what happens with Blue Beetle. I'm not exactly getting my hopes up that this movie is going to somehow lead into the next version of the DC storytelling, given this poor box office. I think it's unfortunately best just to wipe that slate clean, and tough break for Xolo, but alas, I think that's where we are. But let me know, how'd you feel about Blue Beetle? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.